Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of my new podcast, Pause and Rewind. I'll be chatting to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now, but how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now. Because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes, and what makes our guests tick. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there, and welcome to this episode of Pause and Rewind. Things look a bit different today. They might sound a bit different as well, because I'm here with my first in-person live guest, the amazing Barry Brandon, aka the Queer Indigo. Barry, welcome to Pause and Rewind.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited that you are my first in-person guest. And it feels weird being in a studio rather than my office/walk-in wardrobe at home.
I'd imagine, but we all have to come out of the closet at some point, don't we?
Many times.
Over and over and over again till we get it right.
It's relentless. How's London for you?
It is good. I have been busy, quite busy. I'm trying to enjoy the city and I'm spending time with friends and acquaintances, but the workflow is a lot. So I've been on my laptop a lot the last 5 days, but it's fine. Life is good.
We're going to talk about that in a moment. But usually I record an intro and outro for the guests when they're not there. But actually you're here. So for those people that do not know the Queer Indigo, I'm going to give Barry a quick overview of what you do. Not that you need to know, but the audience do. So Barry
this always
is
makes me so uncomfortable. I'm like, do I listen to this part or should I close my ears? Let's see.
Well, I mean, it's impressive. You are a content creator, influencer, public speaker, MC and host, community builder, and LGBTQ leader, icon, and fashionista. Barry is the creative force behind the Queer Indigo, which harnesses social media as a canvas for expression, advocacy, and connection, blending aesthetic appeal with meaningful content that transcends conventional boundaries to a global audience. Barry is also the empowerment visionaire, and I love that title, at For All Humans, a creative, inclusive and strategic marketing agency committed to diversity and crafting campaigns that reflect the richness of human experiences. You've also got Iconica, which is Barry's passion project, which brings humans together for a safer, more inclusive, authentic experience and lots of events. I have yet to get myself to one, and I need to. And soon to be a magazine launch, which is very exciting. I love the way that you do all this through enlightenment, entertainment, and advocating for a world where everyone is free to be their truest selves. You are also an 8 open heart surgery survivor. Wow. It's a lot. Yeah. So I'd like to start, I always start with a big question. What does the world look like for Barry Brandon, aka the Queer Indigo, right now?
Okay, so first of all, listening to all of that, it sounds like that's a lot. And for me, what's so interesting, and those that know me very well, I feel like I'm a very simple person at the end of the day. Like, I go through life fairly simply. And to hear all that, it's like, oh, that does sound like a lot of different things that I do. But really, it just feels like, I don't know, like a typical day walking outside, I guess. What does the world look like for me today? So I guess I could answer that in 2 ways. We can go kind of a deep philosophical, ideological way in which I sort of view the world and all of its magic and beauty. And then there's the reality of what I'm doing. So on that side, the world looks busy. It is busy. We're getting ready for the launch of I Am Iconica's first art book situation. And we're releasing it on September 18th. It'll be available on the website. And we're doing a mag launch in Barcelona on the 26th and Berlin on the 27th. So right now it's really about getting ready for that and balancing some other projects and campaigns that are coming up. That mag that you talked about has been a huge passion project for me because the way that I see the world, I have learned over the course of time and conversations isn't really so many people's vision. And I see it through the lens of like possibility and greatness and excellence. And I find that so many times in life, people, and rightfully so, we talk about the things that are against the queer community, you know, laws and rules, regulations, religion, control, all the nuanced dynamics of where you live and how that impacts us negatively on a local, national, and global scale. And at the same time, all of that is so true. I view queer people as excellent because I view us as like these sort of freedom-seeking truth tellers and peacekeepers. And I feel like we've been navigating our own, unlearning and rebuilding of ourselves in a more intentionally learned way, that we go through life, not everyone, of course, and no one, I'm still learning as well, so I don't want to sound like I know everything. That's not what I mean. But I think a lot of the queer community, trans, non-binary, and queer people, inclusive of some gay and lesbian people, maybe not quite as enlightened as the queers are, but whatever. Whatever. We're all equal, right? We're all equal. There's something that I think happens, and there's sort of a release of a lot of, self-doubt. And you step really into your truth a bit. And oftentimes that comes with self-expression being more, let's say, visible. And maybe your artistic endeavors are really impacted by this growth and ascension. And so we see a lot of inspirational art and mediums and performance art coming from queerness. And so I really wanted to celebrate that queer excellence could look like that of Vogue magazine. Though we don't have the budgets or the access or the brands, what we have is self-expression and, our own self-journeys that have led us to be, some of us, quite unapologetic about the way that we express and the way that we live. And I wanted a space and sort of a book magazine that could capture the magic of a global queer community in who they are, showcased as excellence, despite navigating all of these crazy things that we have to go through all the time. So
Wow.
That is the idea and concept behind the magazine, which I don't think I've ever said out loud in depth like that. So there you go.
I mean, considering you haven't, so eloquent. I mean, mic drop, mic drop. I love the idea of celebrating queer excellence in such an unapologetic way. Being unapologetic is a massive thing of mine. When I turned 40, I had a tattoo on my arm that said unapologetic as fuck, which was the theme for my 40th. And I've actually tried to live by it more and more as I kind of embraced who I am. There's something about turning 40 that means you definitely give less of a fuck, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to tap into that lately.
Are you implying that I'm in my 40s?
I mean, I know that you are.
I am. Though I answer people and say timeless when they ask my age, I am 43. Turning 44 in like 1 week.
Is it 1 week? Okay,
yeah.
So I'm going to come on to that. Visibility comes at a cost sometimes, right? And so I love the fact that you are encouraging people to celebrate themselves and to be visible and put themselves out there. The essence of the magazine sounds like it. The magazine for all humans, the Queer Indigo, is just such a melting pot of everything that you've just said. And I'd just like to start with the Queer Indigo and ask, how did it come to be?
Okay, so I'll give a bit of an abridged version, but I'll provide context. And if you have more questions, I can go deeper, yeah? When I was younger, and I know we're going to get into this later, or I think we are, about my heart surgeries, but it kind of plays into this response. I was born with a congenital heart defect that had me have my first heart surgery when I was like 2 days old. And from birth until 27 is the span of which that I had my 8 heart surgeries. And I remember being very young, growing up in hospitals and mostly living there for most of my young years, even into my teens and then into my 20s as well, but more in my younger years, so my teens. And I remember feeling very aware that tomorrow was not necessarily promised. And on the floor where I was having these surgeries, my first 4 surgeries I had in Miami, then 3 in Alabama and Birmingham, and then 1 in Minnesota at the Mayo Clinic. And all of those different times and ages, maybe not when I was 2 days old, but sort of awareness from maybe 6 or 7 forward, I remember having this thought that I didn't know then what it was until I looked back in retrospect and realized that I was sort of taking into consideration that everyone in the wing, no matter what their race, ethnicity, or culture was, we were all in the same situation of a life-threatening illness. And I was also aware that some people had more money than others. And I don't know how I knew that or how I came to terms with that. But I do remember that at the time, my mom and my dad were still married. Or, they were divorced, but my dad had a job where I had really great insurance covered by his company. And I had a private room. And I didn't grow up with money, but in the situation of the medical world, I had access to insurance in which the treatment, I think, was a little bit different. And I also remember experiencing people being two people in a room, and also just the difficulty in people affording food while they were staying with the person who was having surgery. And there was this Ronald McDonald House that had opened there in Miami where people, like parents and siblings and friends of those that were needing surgery, would stay there while the person was in the hospital. And so I remember also experiencing this sort of nuanced need for resources and the difference between having access and not in the room, all of it. And I think all of those things shaped things in me that I didn't know that were just in my DNA until I sort of realized it. And so the way that I saw the world was through this lens of like, we don't know if we're going to make it. We're all struggling. There's all this difference in who we are as individuals, in money or not, and what that gives and what that doesn't give. But we're all still wanting survival. And at the same time, I grew up in Miami, which was I was born in Miami, but I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, and in the early '80s, and it was quite diverse in the sense of people that lived there. They were from around the world. And so I remember also growing up with the normalcy of having neighbors that were from different countries around the world. And my family members and the way that I grew up never made me feel that there was a difference between all of us together. So it was like the medical side and then societal side and then all of that. I don't remember the original question because I did have to go on a tangent to set it up. But what was the question?
How did the Queer Indigo come to be?
Yes. So as I think then afterwards, as a person who was not straight, and I use that term because my sister outed me, in the sense, quote unquote, outed me to my family when I was 18, and I was with my ex, who's now my best friend of 37 years. We've known each other forever. And the way that I was outed was that I was gay, and I didn't have other words and terminology for that. So it wasn't that I was saying that I was or wasn't that. I just was with my boyfriend, and it is what it was. And into then my 20s, I was experiencing being in gay spaces where I never felt that it made sense. Never. I was always confused about everything. I was like, why are they talking like that? Why is that interaction that way? Why do I feel so different and weird? It feels like I should be here instead of a straight place, but something just feels off. And then as I traveled to Berlin in 2012 for the first time, I really discovered, and giving you a bridge version because I was doing events before that in Atlanta that were quite diverse, but sort of my queer awakening happened in 2012 in Berlin. And I was there for a couple of weeks, and I went back almost every year and did a lot of self-discovery for my sexual orientation and my gender identity, my spirituality, and all these things. So I think over the course of all of those different experiences until I was in my, say, mid-30s, was almost like a caterpillar walking around the world and trying to navigate all these things, you know, my medical condition, I don't want to say struggling orientation, because I wasn't angry at being not straight, but it just didn't make sense of the word gay, you know what I mean? And one of the trips that I took to Berlin, I met someone who changed my life. I had a 3-hour conversation at a queer bar where the person who had cancer and had a tumor, a very large one, that they thought was going to impact her life in a negative way, she wound up getting through that. And we were talking about everything from our medical conditions to our gender identity to our orientations to spirituality to all of it. And she was like, have you ever heard of indigo children and rainbow children and crystal children? And I was like, no. She was like, I think you can read about it. I'll send you some links and see if this aligns with you. So I read, and then I kept reading and reading and reading and reading. And at this time, I was also doing some chakra courses and a Reiki attunement situation. And I always kind of felt that I wasn't a healer with my hands. And so as I was discovering and trying to explore that healer side, I was like, this is not it. Anyway, as I read about crystal, indigo, and rainbow children, I was like, I feel very aligned with that. Also, in some other readings about neurodivergency and of course, the continuum of all of that, I was like, I think I feel the most aligned with this concept of indigo children, and it makes sense to me that that exists in the world, and also just coming into my queerness. And so the Queer Indigo's origin of the title was from that intersection that happened pretty much in Berlin.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. And I changed my handles on social before I launched what then was my social that popped off. Like the name I changed before that. And then everything kind of happened afterwards, and there's a story there if you want to hear it about the walks and everything. But that's the history of the Queer Indigo's name.
I mean, I love it. I love that sense of healing. How much healing did it bring to you? It sounds like quite a lot from just that one big 3-hour conversation.
That 3-hour conversation was an absolute disruption to my entire life.
In the best way.
Yeah, because everything before it felt like everything felt like input.
Yeah.
It was like input, you know, moving around, traveling, my heart condition, my experiences, all of it. And then I was equipped in that 3-hour conversation to have been able to process all of it and also be able to exhale.
Yeah.
Because I was like, now it makes sense. It was like the aha moment that Oprah talks about, where it was like the snap of a finger, but it was because I had been trying to do inner work for so long and also living with myself as a person with my own experiences, that conversation was like the disruption that changed the direction of my life.
I am in awe. Like, that sounds like an amazing moment. Let's focus on the content, because that's how I first came across. I started following in June 2021, so
pretty
3 years
early
ago. And just madly fell in love with the content, the walks. For those of you who haven't seen the Queer Indigo on Instagram, it's a mix of fashion walks with people in the sexiest, coolest outfits. I mean, it's just visually stunning. And for me, I've said this to you before, it was a real kick up the arse in terms of me embracing my truest self, in terms of pushing my own boundaries when it comes to fashion and my own celebration of my body and how I feel about things, starting to wear makeup and that kind of thing. It really kind of spurred me on. So thank you, firstly, because I think it's definitely doing what it was meant to do. But how did that come about? I mean, you boast an impressive list of people that join you for these walks. Everyone from the wonderful Hadi in Barcelona through to Amanda Lepore, Alok,
the only,
you know, mother. But just such incredible people. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, first of all, thank you. That really means a lot. And I don't take it lightly, because I do believe that, like, it, you know, I don't consider myself a celebrity or anything like that at all. I believe everyone has a voice and everyone matters. And I also believe that it is a responsibility, when we have a platform that people are watching, that we're using it for education, access, information, and visibility, and all of that. So, you know, even Hadi, for example, that you mentioned, who I think is amazing. I don't know how many followers they have on Insta and TikTok. I don't think it's outrageously high, but this is a person that I look up to for their expression and sort of the way that they live. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I get inspiration from people of, it doesn't matter, they're following. So I just want to say, like, thank you for that love. And also, I'm so happy that you mentioned Hadi, because it's a human who we share admiration and inspiration for. So admiration for and inspiration from, I should say. So the walk started because when I was younger, I used to dress my mother and my aunt, and I used to watch my grandmother as they would smoke there. I'm not saying smoking is good, because I don't smoke. But back in the day, 20, 30, 40 years ago, my grandmother smoked, and they were very glamorous, the way that they would pose when they smoked. And I just remember sort of like this imagery of them sitting at the kitchen table, my grandmother on my mother's side eating cheesecake, smoking a cigarette, and my grandmother on my father's side, sipping on a coffee or a juice, as she would call it, which I think was a mimosa, champagne, and orange juice in the morning. And yeah, I had a lot of I guess I got a lot of inspiration visually from my grandmothers and my aunts and my mom. And at the same time, I was obsessed with Cicely Tyson when I was younger. And I used to try to just, consume everything I possibly could by watching her. And Oprah was a huge inspiration, not necessarily for expression, but for like who she was as a person. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think I saw all of that. And then it was, in there, and it sort of left for a bit, right? And then I would walk around in heels from time to time. I didn't do drag. Also, drag is amazing. I love that people do it. I'm not a drag queen myself. But I would walk around in heels and just kind of be and exist. And so then in Atlanta, when I was living there, I used to throw events and throw parties and produce them. And I would wear heels when I was hosting and emceeing. And one of the shows that I produced was called Sing for Your Life. We ran it for 4 years, which was almost like watching, The Voice or American Idol live in a space, and it was mostly LGBTQ people that were a part of it, and it was a fun local competition. And the person who won season 1, her name is Josette, got really big on TikTok when it first came out, like 1 million followers within like 3 months. Wow. And so she called me. I was living in Chicago at the time because I was working for a tobacco-free living campaign. That's why I say don't smoke cigarettes, everyone. And she was like, you have to get on this platform and walk. And I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, I'm telling you, you need to get on TikTok and just walk. I was like, this is absurd. This is crazy. Like, no one's doing that. So she's like, I'm coming to Chicago. I have to go there for an event anyway. We're going to do something. So she flew in, and she and myself and my good friend Nico, who's the co-owner of For All Humans, who I've known for 15 plus years or whatever, we did a walk in a park. We weren't wearing heels. We were just walking. And it was to the Heathers the Musical snippet that was going viral on TikTok. So the video did well. I think it got, 40, 50, 60,000 views. And I was like, okay, crazy, but okay. So maybe 2 days later, I was getting ready to go to brunch, and I was with my best friend, Jose, his husband, Levi, Nico, myself, and our good friend Megan was visiting. And I was like, Megan, can you just film this real fast? We're going to do this little dumb snap moment before we get in the Uber to go to brunch. She was like, okay. We were wearing like jeans and t-shirts. I don't even know what we were wearing. And I think that I had heels with me for some reason. I think I popped them on, but it was like a little pump up heel, not a kitten heel. Certainly not, but not a stiletto at the time.
Just to make very clear.
To make very clear, I've never worn a kitten heel in my entire life, and I probably never will. Even when I'm 80, I'll be in a stiletto. Thank you. Love. And so we did this video, and I hadn't turned. So it was like 7 seconds. It was like this little snap thing to a RuPaul song.
Yep.
And I posted it, and that was it. We got on the Uber, went to brunch, and I hadn't turned off the notifications, which, by the way, my notifications are off on my phone for everything. I can't look at them. Right. So I hadn't turned them off because I didn't know how yet. It was the second post I ever made. And my phone was like going crazy. And we're like, what is happening? And the video just got thousands and thousands and thousands of views in like from the moment I posted it. So the next day, I was like, let's do another one and let's wear all black. Because we also did wear a lot of black often. And I was like, let's be us and just wear black and whatever. And we did a little walk moment to a Robin song, Do It Again. And this one went globally viral. And I was like on the news in Germany and Mexico and Italy, and they were playing it on things, and I was getting, people were messaging. Anyway, I don't think TikTok at the time had a DM situation. I don't remember if Instagram did, but I think it did. I started getting messages like crazy from people that were saying, I've never seen anything like this. I've never, like, what are you? You're not trans. You're not a drag queen. You're like a person with a beard wearing heels. You look masculine and feminine. You're walking in a feminine way, but your friends are males. What's happening? And there was a lot of, there were a lot of people that were sharing with me really, really, really deep sort of experiences of how they felt seen. They can't, they were saying like, we can't even walk outside. We want to wear that, but we can't even because of the situation that we're in. It could be physically harmful, etc. I won't go deeper because you get it. And there was just a lot of instant feedback from what people were experiencing from what we were doing, which I thought was just normal fun. There was no thought process about it being activism. There was no thought process about it mattering or meaning anything. It was literally just for fun. And the messages kept coming in. And I'm getting chills because I'm remembering the moment that I said, it was like a week or two after the videos. And I had a meeting with my friends in our Chicago apartment. And I was like, I don't know what to do here. Mm-hmm. I feel oddly unequipped to handle the words that are coming my way because they're way too affirming for what it is that I'm doing. Like, this is like, for me, I feel that trans people, that's who I'm bowing down to. I'm like, I need that kind of visibility and activism because it means so much, and I want to amplify those voices, whether it's booking them, working with them, etc. I'm also personal friends of mine, of course, and I'm always wanting to sort of amplify those voices because I think that they really matter and we really need that. And also just queer voices, non-binary people, queer people, etc. And I never viewed myself that I had even remotely or potentially any kind of impact in this way. And so as it was coming across that it was impacting people in this kind of way, I felt like I didn't deserve it. Okay. So I was like, I don't know what to do. And then they were like, just keep doing it, and we will keep walking, and we'll keep showing up. And then other friends in other cities kept saying, we will do it as well. So I started just from my inner circle, creating content. And then it just kind of kept going. And then I started doing the meetups where I would just say, here's where I'll be and when, come. People started coming. And it just kind of got bigger. So I think I also had a moment where I had to have an inner conversation and say, you know, I used to think that activism was purely and simply connected to the civil rights movement because I'm from the US, and it was just really what I viewed as activism. And I never really considered that activism comes in many different ways, in different forms. And then I was thinking about the Stonewall riots and how that was also an, activism in itself to fight back, and really started diving deeper into the queer rights movements across the country of the US, and also reading a bit about globally speaking. And so anyway, all of it sort of formed my intention to continue doing it. It stemmed from something very fun and nonsensical and very casual to becoming something that people were letting me know that they felt seen by, that it mattered. And then I sort of took ownership over that by saying, okay, I will continue to create this. And in doing so, I made it I made it a point to be inclusive of as many different types of people as I could. You do see a lot of AMAB people in the content, and I think that comes from the fact that a lot of AMAB people that are queer identified, owning their femininity is a big component to it. And so wearing heels and rocking them in a video for them is sort of, I think what I've heard and understood, like really freeing, versus, females, AFAB people, females specifically and particularly, that sort of are already owning that femininity in themselves. Of course, everyone's invited to join, but I think it's why you see a lot of AMAB representation, is because for them it's sort of like it's sort of empowering for queer males in this sense, for this conversation, to feel like some validation from exploring that. But it was really intentional to be open and invite people in and walk with different people with different body types, from different countries and different cultures, because I think queerness is, I've traveled a bit in my life, and what I've realized is that our languages are different, and our political systems are different, and our cultural norms are different, but there's something very aligned in queer identity. I have conversations with queer people globally, and the moral compass is it's the same. It's about freedom and autonomy, self-expression, and being seen for who we are and not for who we're not. Like, I want you to see me. And this shared experience, I think, has driven me to be so excited to collaborate with people globally, because I'm like, we have the same brain,
We're bound by such creativity and
a
championing
yearning for being free.
And community.
And community.
I love all of this. I want to ask, you started off that segment by saying it felt like a dumb walk.
Yeah.
Have you been able to move past that, and can you now see the sheer power in it?
As I roll my eyes and say yes. 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 I think I shifted my mindset. It took a while. It took a while for me to own my power. And I don't say that mine is any different than anyone else's. Everyone has it. I'm saying from a personal experience of my own, it took a while for me to own my own power, because I was very conditioned to be living in survival mode my whole life. I think a lot of it was from my surgeries and just literally trying to survive. And also, I chose a long time ago to choose my life and my freedom, and trying to find a way to make money off of my own self and my intention and my thoughts and my events and my parties and what I wanted to create for the world, versus working for someone else. And so I was actually in survival mode, working below the poverty line for a very long time. And so I think I was conditioned to just live in survival mode. And I think that non-alignment with self-value, like I thought I had self-value, but I didn't know that I did until I knew that I had it. And a lot of it was from that conversation with that human, where that also occurred. So in the sense of the content, it took me a little bit longer to catch up that the content actually had power, not because of me, but because of what it represented from who I was aligning with and who I was working with and collaborating with, etc. And I really have been very intentional to maintain that space in that way. I'm not a typical influencer. I don't take paid work from brands to push products. It's not really interesting to me. It's not really what I want to do. I've wanted it to remain a space that just showcases expression and sometimes offers education, information, and access when I can do that. And on my stories, I'm always sharing people's content that I think people should know about and meet. I've moved past knowing that it's not just fun and frivolous content. I know that it has meaning, and I know that it helps people. And my interpretation of owning that is continuing to put out work like the magazine and like the parties and events where I can utilize my perceived positioning and give access to others and amplify those in ways that I think are oftentimes so much more talented than me and so much more fitting to be followed and sort of, learned from than myself. So yeah, I've just I own it because I get it, but I'm also trying to pivot it and amplify.
And you do, and I don't want you to sell yourself short there, because there is space for everyone, and I think that's what you're highlighting. There is space for everyone to be celebrated.
100%. And actually, we're better when we're together and better in numbers. The more of us that there are in the world that are visible, the more we're going to change culture and ultimately laws.
It is so much fun to see, but it is so meaningful as well, and I love being a consumer of it. I love it. I'm so glad
you have to be in one.
I would love to.
Okay,
I'd love to.
And
from those, following you for 3 years to then kind of like paths crossing through We Create Space and stuff. Yeah. I'm so grateful to be sat here with you. I feel like we've already dived a lot into your origin story as the Queer Indigo, but actually we're going to dive a little bit more into Barry's. I don't know how. I'd love to know how you separate the two, or whether you do separate the two, because it's so hard to separate our identities, right, when they merge. But for now, are you ready to pause and rewind?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do this.
Let's do it.
Take me back. Tell me all about Little Barry.
Little Barry. Well, so I'm from a Sicilian family, third and second generation, depending on the side of the family. And we grew up, my parents were born in Brooklyn, and then I was born in South Beach, which made me probably queer, because the whole island is gay as fuck. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, a lot of my younger years were spent in hospitals. And it was a lot of coloring books and looking out the window, just thinking about my life and what I wanted it to be and how I wanted to live it and what was important. I was very fortunate because I had a lot of family and friends and visitors that would be with me often. It's also something that I noticed that it was not necessarily the same for other people. And I'm not saying it was any reason in particular. I always remember my room being full of people, like so many that the nurses would come in and be like, you can't be in here. There's too many of you. So I was surrounded by a lot of support and love, and a lot of like thinking about what it would be like when I wasn't in there, like what I can do with my life that could be interesting and wonderful. I remember watching a lot of Oprah and I was basically wanting to be her when I grew up, and I followed her career ever since. So I think even when I was better, and I say better because there were times in which, like, I had my 7th surgery when I was 14 and my 8th one at 27. So in these 13 years, I didn't have heart surgery, but I kept having complications here and there. And I was sort of living between healthy and not healthy. I wasn't completely disabled, but I certainly wasn't able, I was, and also in talking to other people with heart conditions that I've met over the years, it is a common thread that we sort of live in this middle ground, because you can wake up one day and feel great, and another day and you feel terrible, and there's not necessarily physical things that you can see on someone unless there are. Right now I have my shirt open. You could probably see my scar, or one of them. I have another one on the side, so you can visually see that there's a scar there, but we look and come across, or could look and come across, perfectly healthy and fine even when we're not. So it was difficult for those 13 years feeling stuck and choosing joy over sadness and depression, and feeling like one day hopefully I'll get out of this. It was a lot of just wishing and hoping, I would say.
What was your kind of, at such a young age, to be dealing with that? Do you remember what were your thoughts about the world were in terms of your sense of self in the world and those around you?
I remember not understanding things that were happening that to me felt ridiculous. I remember being in high school and after that, in my 20s, and also until now, it still happens, that I'll hear a conversation about something and in my own head, like I validate that that conversation means something to that person, but I'm like, you're fighting about that? You're thinking about that? This is how you're spending your time? Also, again, I don't want this to come across that I'm perfect and know everything. That's not what I mean. So I don't want it to be coming across like I'm this, but that's how it feels sometimes. I hear, I'm in situations and I'm experiencing something, an argument, a fight, and I'm like, this is what we're doing?
Yeah.
It made me wired, I think, differently. And I know that to be true because still to this day, even with my closest friends and acquaintances that I meet, I'm aware, and they make me aware that the way that my brain functions is just not, it's just not the same as other people. I'm constantly confused about the state of the world with wars and hate and anger and also anti-LGBTQIA legislation. I'm just so confused because even if I think about it from the perspective of just the heteronormative perspective, gay people and queer people bring money. So why would you not want them to be equal under law, to be opening businesses and spending their money and it's like, yeah, that's a very superficial way to look at it because I'm saying from the perspective of like these countries, but I'm like, this is crazy and asinine. You want your country to thrive and you make people unsafe and they have to leave and go somewhere else. This is nuts. So obviously that's a shared sentiment among other people too. But yeah, it I don't know, it confuses me a lot.
Did that sense of injustice shine through as a kid? Because I know for me, arguing with my dad and his girlfriend at a very young age about refugees. And I also remember arguing with my stepdad when we were part of the church about why should she have to obey you because she's your husband. So I had a very strong sense of injustice as a kid, as a teenager, without really necessarily having the life experience or the knowledge to back it up.
So that's a conversation of nature versus nurture versus experience, and we can of course go into that. I love. I had the same experience. I would say that I know for sure from the perspective of, I remember watching the movie The Color Purple, and I remember watching the show Roots. And I watched Roots in elementary school. That they used to play that in elementary, which I think they still should, by the way. And I remember watching The Color Purple, and I remember having a very visceral, literal reaction to being nauseous and feeling disgusted by the treatment of Black people. It was like I couldn't even grasp that it was a thing that was real. And I also remember watching a couple years later Schindler's List. And I remember having a very similar reaction, being like, this is disgusting. I think that, I don't know where this stuff comes from nature and nurture and DNA and chromosomes and passed down. I'm not a scientist, I don't know. I probably should look it up because it's probably a very interesting thing to learn about ourselves. But I do feel like that input of information aligned with how I think I was already being, like my sort of soul and my existence. And then I received this information and I was like horrified. And I think I've spent a lot of my life, I don't think I do it consciously because I think that just sort of dissolved in me. And I think part of my yearning and seeking for justice comes through that input then. And also now at my age, having experienced the treatment of our community and other people in general and wanting to always advocate for it and also feeling fearless in my own skin. When I say fearless, I mean, we talked about it right before we started here on the podcast about it being visible outside on the streets, you know. I'm not a very fearful person. I fear getting dead and that's it. Well, I'm fearful of scuba diving and bungee jumping, which I'll never do.
Same heights, no thanks.
No, thank you. But I'm fearful of getting dead. But really, when it comes to sort of me being outside as myself, wearing clothes and walking down the street and filming my content that I do outside on the streets, I have zero fear. And it probably is a bad thing, to be honest. It probably isn't great.
I love it.
But I think that I recognize that I do have this piece of fearlessness in me, which drives me even more so to advocate
Yeah.
for others. But at the same time, I also don't want to advocate for someone because I do feel I don't want to I don't want to minimize someone's ability or lack thereof to advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
So I never want to like overstep and speak for them, but I want to provide access for them to be included in a fearless situation, or to amplify someone and provide an opportunity, whether it's I don't know, a collaboration on social or a paid gig or in a campaign or something that lets them be able to, you know, speak and share their story. So
I think there's standing up for, and then there's also standing beside. And I think I think in essence that's it. Probably not one for another conversation, but you mentioned neurodivergence earlier. There's really strong links between justice and a yearning for justice and neurodivergence, particularly ADHD. So it's something I read earlier, which
makes sense.
Resonated with me quite a lot. I just want to jump back to early years. What are perhaps some of your favorite anecdotes that you've heard about yourself?
Give me your definition for anecdote and what you mean in context.
Something quirky that you did as a kid that your perhaps parents have told you about. One of mine, for example, is I used to go crazy in my baby walker and I ran over my budgie, which then attacked me. You know, something that makes you laugh that you've heard about yourself.
I do. So my aunt Helena tells this story, and she still tells it to this day. She calls me Bavida. That's my name. Bavida.
Okay.
She says it's the Italian way to say my name, but I think it's just like the New York way to be like, I don't know, Bavida. They say I used to run around with a fork.
Okay.
And I used to go up to the outlet and laugh and smile as if I was going to stick it. And I would wait for them to look at me, and then I would do it when they would look at me.
Right. So you'd want that recognition.
Yeah. I wanted someone to see that I was about to do something terrible or cause myself self-harm. This is the only thing that I could recall that I've heard about myself, and it was a repetitive thing. You know, she said like I did it for years. Yeah, I think that was it. I don't know. Okay. I'm sure there were more for sure, but that's the one that comes to mind.
I love it.
Waiting, and then in the socket, boom. Can you?
And
imagine?
there's something about the attention nature of that, and the risky nature, and the fearlessness. Maybe that fearlessness coming through.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. I think maybe
Jump into your teenage years. Obviously, for many of us, really formative time for queer people. Can be really difficult. I know for me, it certainly was. Changes in our bodies, first bits of relationships, perhaps heartbreak. What does teenage life look like for you? What were your ambitions? What were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking that I wanted to go to college, to NYU, to be a part of the Tisch musical theater program. And unfortunately, none of it was in the cards because I didn't graduate high school because I wound up in the hospital my senior year a lot. And college just wasn't a thing financially and or for what was needed for me to do that. So I think my 20s were really spent a lot doing not so many things. I was really between sick and not sick. And I was really just in survival mode. And I had some really lovely friends, and I had great moments and a lot of joy in my friendships. But as far as any type of career, any type of direction towards my life or what it was looking like, it was essentially non-existent. It was just a lot of dreaming and thoughts and ideas of what I could do and what I would do if ever I wasn't feeling not great. Okay. Yeah, that was a lot. And then I had my eighth surgery when I was 27, and I felt great after that. And I moved to New York and was working as a concierge at a hotel, and I was making crazy money, and I quit after a year because I thought it was the most frivolous. I just felt terrible about the exchange of money that was happening.
Did you enjoy it?
Not
the money side of things.
I loved it for about 3 months.
Okay.
Because I had never made that kind of money ever.
Yeah.
And I never had that kind of ridiculous access. Like everything was free. I worked as a concierge in Fort Lauderdale before that, the year before my last surgery and a little bit after that surgery. And I began to have money for the first time, like ever as an adult. I was like, this is weird. Like, oh, you can make money and like afford your life, you know? And I had always wanted to move to New York. And I told myself if ever I could be better, be healthy, I would move to New York. And if ever New York, I didn't love it, I would move to Europe. And I had never been here, but I was like wanting to just get out. And I moved to New York, and I loved it for 3 months. Everything was free. I had standing dinners and lunches and breakfast at any restaurant, anytime. Walk in, give them my business card, free. Broadway tickets, free. Concerts, free. Everything, free. People were handing me $100 bills to make a reservation, and I was like, this is amazing. It was a celebrity hotel, so we had like, I guess I can name drop here. We had like, and And I remember meeting one time or stayed. Actually, I don't know if I could say that. I wonder if I ever signed an NDA. Maybe might have to. We might have to remove that. I don't know. But we had celebrity clientele, and it was cool. And then after a couple months, I was like, "This is gross." Actually,
Okay. Didn't enjoy it.
yeah, it's not that I didn't enjoy it. I had this almost allergic reaction to how much money was being tossed around that had no impact on the world in any way, shape, or form, and it was so casual. And I love the word casual, but not in this context. Yeah. It was so casually being just tossed that I was like, this is not it. I can't be here. And so I quit.
Okay.
And I then when I was living there, I recorded an EP of music and I released it. And I had a show called In My Own Words. And that show that I had toured with a bit, it was my own show. It was me and my best friend, mostly me. And then he had a side piece to it. He wrote some of the music in it, and I would sing, and I would talk about my life and my childhood, my experiences. And I think I toured it in like 7 different cities or something. And it was completely unscripted. So I had the arc of the show of what I knew that I would get to, but every show was just unscripted, and whatever happened, happened. And I had a pianist who played the songs that I would, set up the stories and sing a song, etc. So I was doing a bit of musical theater and a bit of what I loved, which was music then. And then I recorded an EP and released it. But then I just quit and I was like, this isn't it, So then I just started slowly carving my way and I flew to London with my good friend Melissa, and they let her in and did not let me in and detained me and sent me back to the States.
Why?
I don't know. They thought, I don't know.
Never found out to this day.
No. And so they flew me back and I was like, okay. So I moved to Atlanta where I had lived for a couple years before. And I did my show In My Own Words. And someone came to the show and referred me to someone who then came to my next show. And they were like, you would be a great promoter. And I was like, what is that? And they were like, working in nightlife as a promoter, creating events. And I was like, okay, let me try it. And they gave me a weekly night on a Thursday. And I curated this night where we had artists show their work that was for sale to the public. And I had a DJ, and it was a queer, LGBTQ oriented evening. And that just then kept me going to creating new ideas and new endeavors and throwing parties and throwing events and producing, which then led into all the work I'm doing now, slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly down the road. So
you've chosen a life of graft, right? And I think for us queer people, many of us wear different hats. Same. I feel like I'm non-stop, and when I speak to normal people, I say normal in a loose way, say to me, I don't know how you keep up with it all, when do you ever rest? You had a life that felt very much like you said, it was frivolous, money just being thrown at you, but yet you've chosen to opt for this life of graft.
Yeah.
Why?
It wasn't really a choice. It was like, I can't.
You needed to.
Yeah.
Same.
I have spent my entire life developing my intuition, which was always there fairly strong when I was younger. I used to have very clear indicators of decisions to make based on how I felt intuitively. And I think once I explored that, and also on my journey to self-healing and self-value and my queerness and all of that, what I've learned to be true is my intuition has never lied to me once. It just never lies. It doesn't ever lie. It doesn't know how to lie. And so if and when I have made decisions despite my intuition, it's never worked.
Yep.
And anytime that I've tried to explore opportunities that I was pushing too hard for, it also never worked. And so I think at some point I just said, my intuition is my guiding force. I don't have a college degree. I don't have a high school diploma. I don't have a leg to stand on for what I say in the world. I also don't think that my voice, that people should listen to me. I'm just sharing my own experience and my own thoughts and opinions. And also now in a professional endeavor because I've been doing the work I've been doing for a while, I do have some professional thoughts that I can share with clients and friends and acquaintances and everyone. Doesn't mean you have to listen, but it's all based on my intuition. And I think that once I really trusted it, and as I still do, that's when growth occurs, because you can't plan for a life of true freedom and autonomy if you're not in line with your intuition. It's like can't happen.
Wow.
I think
Mic drop.
from my perspective anyway.
Love.
I don't know what I said, but I hope it made sense.
Listen back. It was a mic drop moment. I'd love to know what happens next, because obviously doing your own show, you know, hosting, and we can definitely see that now in what you do. What happens next, and when was the point that in the narrative that the Queer Indigo was born around the time of that 3-hour conversation?
Well, what's next is my business partner and one of my very best friends, Nico. It's been a topic of conversation for a while from me and from him and from other close friends. I really want to have a show, and I want to speak more. And I've deterred from doing so on my social mostly. I've done some, but I mostly have not. And a lot of it is because I don't like the idea of telling people what to do, or having people perceive that me sharing information feels to them like a directive for them to listen to what I say. I don't feel that I have that kind of power. And I also don't feel that my experience is aligned with anyone else's. Like, I do believe that you can gain inspiration from people's stories, and you could take pieces of people's lives and they can make sense to your own. But if you try to replicate it, it's in opposition to living in yourself.
For sure.
Right? So I felt very nervous about speaking, because I was nervous that it would be taken out of context, that I was either telling someone what to do or whatever, or all the things that come along with it. And what I now feel, so anyway, what I've been doing with my social is intentionally using the visual content as the mirror, so that people can see it and perceive it how they want to. And I'll write sometimes in the copy certain information, you know, sometimes not at all. Sometimes it's just like Tuesday glam. But sometimes I'll sort of, you know, support it with information and education, which maybe is the same thing as speaking. But for me, it's a little bit less, because I can construct it from my point of view and people can read it and hear it. What I really want to do is speak more about my experiences and my thoughts. And yeah, I have a lot of them. And I have a lot of deep conversations with people, which I love, intimate conversations all the time. And it's not really been translated to my socials and to my platform. So I really want to share more and express more and speak more. So that's one thing. Honestly, maybe that's it. I mean, the magazine's coming out, so hopefully people love it and we could do more issues of it. That would be amazing. And hopefully we can bring back the I Am Iconica event. Would love to bring it to London and Berlin.
Wow,
see if people like it.
I'm sure they would. I've heard such good things. And, you know, Yaz, who's a mutual connection,
yes.
When they walked in it.
Yeah, they walked in one of the fashion shows.
Yeah.
Actually, they came back to walk in it, because they came to an event when they were staying with me in the flat. And they were heading back here to London, and the next party was happening when they were already here. Yeah. And they literally flew in to come to the event and walked in the fashion show. And I was like, what up? I mean, it's things like that from, like, honestly, like, really real talk. Things like that happen that I'm like, that really makes me feel that the work matters, when someone feels seen and validated. Also, I don't want to speak for them, so I don't want to use words that are placed upon them. Course. When anyone in general says to me something like, you know, this happened and I did this, or I went here and I joined here, I went to your this and I came back because of this. It's like, you know, our world, those events, parties that we do don't always make money. And for me, it's not about money. The events are not about money. Yeah. It's a passion project to create space for us to be together. Yeah. And that's what that event is. And she's a very pricey party. She's a pricey event. Yeah. But it needs that, because I feel like you want to walk in and feel that queer excellence. And when people say and share things like, you know, I have people that have said to me they've flown in from different countries just for the party. And I'm like, what? This is crazy. So it makes, you know, it makes
it worth it though, right?
It makes it worth it. And it makes also my team, my friends, my team, my coworker, everyone, it makes us all feel that the blood, sweat, and tears, an extra layer of attention to detail, because we know that we are working with, in, and for the community. It's there even more. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. From running the House to Happiness, all of that resonates, because it maybe doesn't feel worth it in the run up to it. It feels like, what the fuck am I doing?
It feels
like,
exhausting, doesn't
it's exhausting, but
it's
then
like,
you're there and it's like, oh, this is lovely.
There it is. There it is. There's Amanda Lepore.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you mentioned
Okay,
Amanda and Alok.
I can't say that, but
No,
yeah.
no, no. You mentioned Amanda and Alok, and sorry, I'll stop talking after that. But I did
No,
want to
don't.
remember to say it. The thing about the magazine was so I used to work with Wussy Mag, which is a really cool. If y'all don't know it, you should check it out. John Dean is the editor and owner of the company, and they're based in Atlanta, and they do queer events, and they also have a fag rag, and it's cool. They put out really cool stuff, and he started it before my alignment with him. I came to Berlin, I went back, we aligned together, and I worked with him for like a year and a half, and we did a couple magazines. And actually, Amanda was on one of the covers. She was the first cover we got for the new direction of the magazine, in which was his vision. And I enjoyed thoroughly working with him on all the projects. At the same time, it's always different when you're supporting someone's vision of what they're looking to do versus your own vision. And I loved supporting him in doing so, and I loved being able to help and make his vision a reality, and also give, of course, some of my ideas as well. But then this one here is just, it's like my brain, and also collaborating with people. So it's not only me, there's a ton of people that helped made this come to fruition. But from the perspective of just the concept and the sort of meat of the magazine came from what I was hoping to convey, which I talked earlier to you about. And when I was conceptualizing the mag, I said to myself and my best friend, how I will know if the right time to do this magazine is now is if I email Alok and they say yes to being on the cover.
Okay.
I was like, if I can get them on the cover, then I'm doing the project. And I emailed and they said yes, like instantaneously. And I was like, okay, we're doing it. And the next person, and then I was like, I really want it to be a double cover because I'm doing it. There's no paid advertisement. It's just us. And then we hope that it makes its money back so that, of course, we can do more. Yeah. So there's no rules. We don't have to follow any rules. There's nothing. So rather than do a back cover, I was like, I want a double cover, or maybe a local on the back, doesn't matter. Like I want a double-sided cover. And the second person that I wanted was Amanda Lepore.
Both absolute icons.
Yeah. So I booked Amanda for Iconica, for I Am Iconica, for the event. And we had her photographed. The team did the photos. And we were able to get them both on the double-sided cover. So we have Amanda on the front, Alok on the back. And it's literally like, yeah, them saying yes to that was, for me, the validation. And I should say that Alok and I had never talked before. We hadn't met. This was a cold call. This is a cold email. And also, I provided, my links to my social and my website so I could provide context of who I was and the work I was doing. But, not everyone says yes to things like that. You don't know that person. You don't know how it's going to turn out. You have no idea about anything, really. And they said yes. And it was like, all right.
I hope that in your humbleness, because you are you've kind of downplayed yourself a lot in this. I hope in your humbleness you've by people saying yes that you're able to tap into a little bit of pride in that, because they are buying into the project and the overall vision, but that is you.
Sure.
I'll leave it there.
No, it's like, I don't know. I view myself as a vessel.
Yeah.
I really do. Like, I think the thing is that when you say something like that, which I think is very kind and I appreciate it and I receive it, but the truth is when I am doing life, I don't think, I'm always thinking about how to make the thing happen.
Rather than the grandeur around.
And don't get me wrong, there are times that I do feel, I'll tell you an example of when I'm in a situation that I overhear, or if I'm in the conversation or not in it, and it's happening with me or not, and in earshot, I hear a conversation that sounds that it just needs disruption. I am happy to be the person to cut through the passive aggressive lightheartedness to be like, no, what we're not going to do. Yep. And I definitely think in those moments, I think that's when I feel inclined and comfortable to insert power.
Yep.
Because most of the time I'd rather sort of sit back and let other people shine. And in those moments, I do feel like that's my punch point, if you know what I'm saying. But also, like, I remember having a very specific conversation on a rooftop in Mexico with someone during the time that Got Mick was on Drag Race. And I was with my best friends, Jose and Levi, and a random person, and who I didn't know and their friends, and someone was making transphobic comments, basically saying something like, well, she's going to win because she's a woman. And I was like, what we're not going to do. And it was like one of those moments where I didn't know him. He's not my friend, but I feel very, very, very adamantly strong to insert and like correct it. And I think in those moments, I guess I would say how I'm interpreting that of your lovely compliment is it comes out for me in those moments.
Yep.
I sort of don't feel the need, or I don't own it, I guess, or wear it unless it's in environments like that where I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the boss.
Yeah. Or when I'm emceeing something.
Yeah.
To take ownership a bit and sort of maybe share some information or something that feels, I don't know.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I'm talking a lot.
No. Well, I mean, we don't take a chance to reflect, right? And this is pause and rewind is always is about that.
Okay.
We are running low on time, so I've got a couple of questions left for this segment. We're
That's
keeping
10
an eye
minutes.
on it. So, talk to me about someone who has shaped you the most along the way.
Somebody has asked me that before, and I don't really have an answer because I don't feel, and this is like not a dig, and it's not intended to come across any kind of way. Unfortunately, I don't feel as there was anyone in my life that shaped me until my own queerness, and then from that, everyone around me shapes me. It went from sort of not really anyone necessarily to inspiration and shaped from every person that I honor and respect and look to. And I guess I would say that my grandmother on my mother's side gave me, I felt very comfortable around her. And maybe I wasn't shaped by her in a sense of like, from a perspective of how I'm using the word shape to be, maybe not that from her, but I always felt very comfortable and seen, always. So yeah, I think like unconditional love from her for sure. And then shaping came after, I would say.
Yeah.
Does that sound weird?
No, not at all.
But inspiration from Oprah.
I picked up on Oprah.
Yeah.
I picked up on Oprah.
A lot, yeah.
I usually ask the question, does happiness and success look and how you thought it would? But I just want to dive back into that self-claimed title of a open heart surgery survivor. You shared a post recently on Instagram that, well, made me well up when I read it. And you said, if you would have told me that I would be alive at 43, I would not have believed you. I'm turning 44 in a matter of weeks, next week, and largely overwhelmingly happy and full of joy. Once in a blue moon, I take a super quick moment to look in the mirror and say, we are still here, and now we thrive.
Yeah.
Does happiness and success look and feel how you thought it would? Reading that back to you.
Self-joy. I think it's rooted in self-joy. I think you can't find true happiness unless you have self-joy, which I think is a bit selfish, and we need to be selfish with our time to find that self-joy. But I have found in my life that my peace and it's personal and professional. For my own inner self, I have found solace in self-value and self-joy that's made me feel like I can exhale very comfortably and navigate the world like sort of fearless, I think. Yeah. And in a professional environment, I'm able to amplify others because I can hold space for them so comfortably and easily because there's no jealousy and no ego. I sort of never really had a jealousy thing. That's another conversation. But it's like, yeah. And also in interpersonal relationships, like with my best friend and my close friends and like prospective people that I'm dating, I think also that level of joy and happiness makes me know that we can get through anything. It's just about being honest and being transparent and speaking truth.
You said earlier you weren't afraid of anything, but afraid of being dead. Getting dead. Love that. How much of this taps into legacy? Because I've hit my 40s and I'm very mindful of mortality, but also of legacy, right? I don't have kids, don't come from a big family. How much of this taps into your legacy? I
have not ever thought about hoping that people will remember me when I'm dead.
Yeah.
I hope that the work that I'm doing impacts change later. And to be honest, in a perfect world, I wouldn't be remembered because that generation is then born and doesn't have to deal with what we had to. And so my story becomes irrelevant. It's like, we don't even need that because it doesn't matter. So I think the legacy for me would be that it somehow shaped or formed, no, let me rephrase, that people that are alive now are somehow helped to see themselves and give themselves permission to be freer and to take back that autonomy, have more autonomy over their lives and take back ownership over that, and feel more safe and comfortable to express themselves. And I don't mean by way of like a man putting on a dress. I don't mean it that literally. No. I mean exploring your self-expression and giving yourself permission to do that and find the way that you want to be in the world, right? And then the other piece, I think, is like just having that trickle down and continue to trickle down so that it changes culture later.
Final question for this segment. In a few words, what are you most proud of to date?
My friendships, I would say. They're long lasting. And I've learned later in life that not everyone has these long, beautiful, blessed, fulfilled, joyous friendships that I have been able to have. My best friend and I have been BFFs since 1998, 97 or 98. And he's not the only one. I have friends that I've known for years, and I continue to communicate with them, and we have moments and we meet up once in a while and we get on FaceTimes, you know? So I think that's the most, it's that, my friendships, I would say.
The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. Are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Yes.
Okay, which album, book or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
The Color Purple for a movie. Album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill when I was younger. Later in life, maybe Robin's Body Talk.
Love.
And what was the other question?
Book.
Book. I don't like to read books.
Fair.
So null and void.
What saying do you live by, and one would you put in the bin?
Do you know what? To be honest with you, I don't have one particular saying, but sometimes I do write things and people tell me later, like, I read this that you wrote and it's so whatever. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that I said or wrote that. So that I don't have, that I don't know.
Oh, good.
I don't know. But let me think about it and get back to you in post, because if I do come up with something, I'll message you and be like, this is my actual answer.
My one for the bin is It Is What It Is.
Yeah, I don't love that one.
Reeks of complacency.
Yeah, that one I don't like.
And it comes up a lot.
But I will say, the word should. I think this word could be gone. Just replace the word should with could, because one implies self-doubt, and you also feel bad. You could feel bad about yourself if you don't execute the thing that you think that you should do. And could replaces it with possibility and potential. And you're not let down if it doesn't happen, because you could always go a different way. So that's not like the phrase I would say I'm whatever, but it's a good piece of advice, I guess.
Change
Replace
your should
with could.
Change your should to could.
Yeah.
What's been the best adventure of your life so far?
Self-exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What 3 words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
Frocio, which is faggot in Italian. 3 words. I don't know. That's a really interesting question. And I'm having trouble answering it because it's such a simple question, which feels like it should be so simple. But I would say, I don't know, maybe laughter, love, and joy. Sounds like that stupid sign. What's the one?
It's not live, laugh, love.
Oh my God, please. Not that. But it's very close. Oh no. I'll also change my answer and give it to you in post. I got to think about the 3 words.
Okay, that will make up the title of this podcast, so I kind of need it.
Okay, damn it.
Let's fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
What exciting things do you have coming up? Obviously, the magazine launch.
Yeah. Also, I think I'm gonna rent a flat in Berlin,
Okay.
which is my favorite city
Love
in the
Berlin.
world, and be there more often and align with the studio to be creating content not only for myself but with other people. So I'm super excited about that endeavor, and just continuing to work with campaigns that advocate for positive change in the queer community.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And For All Humans has had a real bit of a facelift.
Yeah.
It looks fantastic.
Thank
So
you.
captivating. Love the videos. What
Thanks.
brings you joy?
Intimate conversations, time spent with friends, relaxation with other, could be one person or multiple, just being. I love just being.
Just being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't do drugs. I drink occasionally. I'm not like a super party clubber. Also, none of those things. Anyone can do whatever they want. I don't care. Like, live your life.
Yeah.
It's just not really what I do, and I find so much more fulfillment in sharing space and time intimately with friends and just being, sitting at a table and having dinner, or going for a coffee, or just taking a stroll around the city. Yeah.
I feel so much more
Sitting by
present.
the water.
I feel water, absolutely. I feel so
Water.
much more present now that
Yeah.
I don't do so much. Don't drink. Don't take drugs. Like being
Yeah.
present in the moment. That's
good,
so
right?
much so joyful. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of contentment in it. Practical takeaways.
Yeah.
What practical takeaways do you have for anyone wanting to either carve out an inclusive space or create an inclusive campaign?
I would say it's not likely that you're going to check every single box when you're
Yeah.
doing anything. There's just no way. In order for the representation to be so correct and validating for everyone's intersectional identity, we would have to have 200 people cast in every piece of content that we ever made.
Yeah.
I think just being cognizant about trying to showcase diversity and inclusivity where you can. It also doesn't mean that everything is that every single time. You know, I've walked in videos with, two best friends that are Caucasian men, and I've walked in videos with my friends that are all, Arab girls. And, there's intersectionality in representation and diversity, but I think as long as you're being cognizant and aware and inclusive and showcasing diversity as you can when you're sort of showing your work, I think is the right path to showcase the representation that we love. So
Thank you. And my final question for you.
Yeah.
What words of encouragement or wisdom do you have for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
I would say it's okay to pause and sit with yourself and have a reality check conversation that says everything you ever learned was a lie.
Okay.
And even if people around you were not intentionally trying to harm you and hurt you by lying, the lies were inclusive of passed down trauma, from cultural norms to religious institutions to survival mode. If you can sit and learn deeply and profoundly and own that everything you ever learned was a lie, I think that's the access point to healing, because you can be really sad about that for a moment and sit in that sort of heartbreak, but then you get to rebuild yourself for the person that you are.
That's beautiful. Barry, thank you so much. I'm so glad we made time to do this and that our paths crossed. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you for having me.
And I can't wait to hopefully collaborate. I'm definitely going to take you up on a walk offer. But
we need to.
Stay tuned and stay tuned for everything that Barry has coming up. Thank you for listening to this episode or watching this episode of Pause and Rewind.
Yeah, watching.
Hey. Cheers, Barry.
Ciao, amore.
Wow, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. It was an absolute dream to sit and have it in person with Barry for my first studio recording of Pause and Rewind. And it was just as much a whirlwind watching and listening to it back as it was having it at the time. It's been a few weeks since we recorded it, and I've had time to reflect. And what really stands out to me is listening to Barry talking about those early moments of childhood and laying in hospital beds, following surgery, looking out the window and just wishing, through to those inspirational words from today. And now we thrive. And thriving, Barry really is. He's just celebrated 2 successful launches of his new magazine, Iconica, one in Barcelona and one in Berlin. And it was really beautiful to see those on socials and to see that queer excellence that Barry strives for and the way that he brings his friends and the community along for that ride. And I loved hearing about the spine tingling 3 hour conversation that Barry had with a stranger that he describes as an absolute disruption to his life, one that he's grateful for, and one that we're grateful for too, because as a result, we have the Queer Indigo. Barry uses these 3 words to describe his origin story, and we had to touch base on these post conversation to avoid that live, laugh, love situation. And the words he uses are resilience, dreamer, and courageous. When I launched this podcast, one of the things that stuck in my mind, it's one of the captions is you may never know someone's origin story, but if you listen closely, you'll hear it, you'll see it, and you'll feel it. And I really feel those 3 words of resilience, dreamer, and courageous when I think about Barry and the Queer Indigo. Barry, I am so grateful for you for being a guest on Pause and Rewind. I loved that time with you. I can't wait to get on one of your walks. They bring me so much joy, and they bring so much inspiration and acceptance and hope for so many people around the world. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and stay tuned for more amazing guests on Pause and Rewind. Cheers. If you enjoyed this episode, then please like, subscribe, and share. And you can also now comment on each episode via Spotify. Doing so can help spread the word and get these amazing stories out there. Plus, you'll be inspiring others to help make the world a more inclusive place. Cheers!